Let's be clear about something. You're not stuck because you're lazy. You're not stuck because you lack motivation. You're stuck because you're still loyal to a version of yourself that was never designed to win. He was built to survive. He was built to endure. But he was not built to conquer. And now, he must. This isn't about improvement. This isn't about getting 10% better, waking up a little earlier, or watching another inspirational video that makes you feel good for 5 minutes and changes nothing. This is a funeral for the man who hesitates. Because if you don't bury him, he will bury your potential. There is a war happening right now, and the most violent battleground on Earth is not found in some foreign land. It's found in the space between who you are and who you could be. Every excuse you cling to, every delay you tolerate, every comfort you refuse to surrender is a chain welded by the man you used to be. He's not leaving without a fight. But here's the brutal truth. You cannot reach greatness while remaining loyal to a self who fears it. That former identity, built in crisis, sculpted by survival, protected by excuses, is a liar. He whispers. Be careful. He whispers. Not now. He whispers. Maybe someday. And every time you listen, you sell your destiny for the price of another day of comfort. That ends today. This message is not self-help. It's a challenge. It's a war cry. This is for the man who's done waiting, who's ready to stop rehearsing his potential and start living it. If that's you, here's the mission. Burn the script, starve the pattern, demolish the lie that tells you you're not ready. You were not born to survive. You were born to strategize, to build, to break cycles, to rise so violently that the man you were wouldn't recognize the man you've become. This is your turning point. No more negotiations with fear. No more partnerships with hesitation. No more tolerance for mediocrity. The future belongs to the man who outgrows his past by force. Be that man. Or be forgotten. Please like and subscribe our channel if you like our speech. Thanks. You are not stuck because you lack ambition, discipline, or motivation. You are stuck because you are unconsciously loyal to an outdated identity, an internal blueprint that was constructed during a time of fear, scarcity, and uncertainty. This version of you was not created for expansion, success, or fulfillment. It was built in reaction to pain, formed in the fire of past disappointments, and designed not to win but merely to endure. And the tragedy is this: many men spend their lives mistaking survival for strength, mistaking silence for peace, and mistaking familiarity for truth. This loyalty is not conscious. It operates beneath your awareness. It's the quiet voice that tells you to shrink when it's time to speak. It's the invisible wall that stops you from taking action when opportunity appears. It's the subtle tension that rises every time you begin to outgrow your environment. That's not laziness. That's not fear. That is identity preservation. Your subconscious mind is not invested in your greatness. It is invested in your safety. It doesn't care about fulfillment. It cares about familiarity. So when you attempt to act like the man you could be, your nervous system rebels in favor of the man you used to be. And if you're not aware of this war, you will interpret discomfort as failure and retreat back into old patterns. This is why no level of motivation can free you, because motivation is fuel, and fuel poured into a broken engine still gets you nowhere. Until you dismantle the internal loyalty you've developed toward the man who once needed to protect himself at all costs, you will continue to sabotage the man who's ready to rise. You are not a prisoner of your potential. You are a prisoner of your programming. And until you recognize the difference, progress will always feel impossible. This is not a conversation about improvement. Improvement implies enhancement of something that is fundamentally intact. But what if the foundation is flawed? What if the framework of your current identity, the values, behaviors, and self-image you operate from, was constructed under duress, shaped by necessity rather than truth? In such a case, to merely improve would be to polish a mask, to decorate a limitation. You do not need a better version of who you are now. You need to become someone entirely different. That is not self-help. That is self-replacement. This is not about adding layers of productivity, discipline, or confidence to the man who already exists. This is about a psychological and spiritual rebirth, a restructuring of the very consciousness from which all your choices emerge. Rebirth is not poetic, it is disruptive. It is not romantic, it is radical. It is not about comfort, but confrontation. To be reborn, a man must first acknowledge that the version of himself he clings to is a survival artifact, not a strategic creation. That version is filled with outdated mechanisms, emotional reflexes designed to avoid rejection, belief systems sculpted to justify limitation, and habitual narratives that explain away risk. If you continue to identify with that man, every goal you pursue will be filtered through the limitations he created. You will speak of expansion while serving your comfort. You will crave success but remain seduced by safety. To be reborn is to dissolve all familiarity with who you were. It is to abandon the ego's desire to be consistent with the past. It is to accept the death of the known self in exchange for the possibility of something unrecognizable. Rebirth demands that you no longer measure your future by the metrics of your history. It asks you to become a vessel, not for who you were, but for who you must become. The most dangerous habit a man can form is the quiet, passive tolerance of his former self. It masquerades as humility, as patience, even as self-acceptance. But beneath that mask lies a deep and corrosive allegiance to mediocrity. Tolerance of the old self is not a neutral act. It is a daily decision to delay transformation. It is the subtle agreement to allow fear, doubt, and emotional inertia to govern the architecture of your future. This tolerance is not loud. It does not arrive with alarms or warnings. It enters in the form of excuses that feel rational, of comfort that feels deserved, of routines that feel responsible. And in doing so, it renders you blind to the cost, the erosion of your potential. Excuses are not mere words. They are defense mechanisms crafted by the mind to preserve the identity that feels safest. Each time you justify inaction, procrastinate on purpose, or rationalize delay, you are not simply being lazy. You are reinforcing a neurological and emotional allegiance to the man who was built to survive, not succeed. The tragedy is not in failure itself, but in your growing capacity to normalize it. When you tolerate being slightly off course, slightly unprepared, slightly below your own standard, you unconsciously give that version of yourself permission to lead. And the more you tolerate, the more that version becomes permanent. What begins as hesitation ends in identity. What begins as a single excuse becomes a belief system. The mind adapts quickly, and if you allow it to associate stillness with safety, it will sabotage any forward motion in the name of self-protection. This habit, once formed, is not content to remain passive. It becomes an inner authority, a subtle tyrant. And it governs not with force, but with seductive logic. The only way to break it is not by negotiation, but by severance. There is a war being waged within every man, a silent, invisible conflict between who he is and who he was. This war does not begin on the battlefield of action, but in the quiet theater of identity. One part of you is striving for greatness, clarity, and purpose, while another part clings desperately to the familiarity of survival. These are not merely phases of life. They are competing forces that cannot coexist in harmony. One must be subdued. One must be buried. The man who was shaped by fear, scarcity, and reaction does not surrender easily. He has history on his side. He has memory, habit, and comfort woven into your nervous system. And unless you choose to confront him with deliberate force, he will continue to dictate your decisions under the illusion of wisdom. This war is not external. It is not about the world's resistance. It is about your resistance to leaving behind the safety of the known. There is no greater act of violence against your future than the refusal to part ways with your past. The man you used to be, though he may have carried you through hardship, is no longer your ally. He was forged to protect, not build. His reflexes are defensive. His thoughts are cautious. His vision is narrow. If you let him lead, he will pull you back into cycles of avoidance, delay, and underachievement, while disguising them as prudence and responsibility. You must see this inner conflict for what it truly is: a spiritual war, a psychological revolution. You are not upgrading a system. You are replacing a ruler. The longer you allow the former version of yourself to influence your choices, the more distant your true potential becomes. The transformation you seek requires dominance, not negotiation. Growth is not a passive unfolding of time. It is a deliberate act of separation. You do not drift into evolution. You force it by severing ties with the man you once were. The self you are seeking to become does not emerge through comfort, patience, or passive inspiration. He emerges through internal disruption, through an unrelenting refusal to let outdated identity remain seated at the head of your life's table. You must not wait to feel ready. Readiness is a luxury of the transformed. For the man who is still becoming, action must precede certainty, and clarity must follow obedience to a deeper calling. Your former self will not leave willingly. He is not a ghost. He is a structure, reinforced by years of repetition, endorsed by every moment you avoided discomfort, and confirmed by the emotional narratives you've protected. This identity will attempt to convince you that change is betrayal, that risk is recklessness, and that ambition is arrogance. But in truth, what feels like betrayal is often integrity, loyalty to a future self who cannot breathe in the presence of outdated beliefs. If you are waiting to grow naturally, you will wait forever. The internal system must be interrupted. This is not a matter of gradual refinement. You cannot become exceptional while negotiating with the version of yourself that was designed for predictability. You cannot lead a bold life while obeying the rules of the man who feared being seen. Outgrowing him requires confrontation, a daily, intentional process of rejecting the thought patterns, emotional defaults, and habitual reactions that once served you. It requires force, not in aggression, but in unwavering discipline. You must push beyond inherited narratives and imposed limitations. Not once, but continuously. Evolution is not a single decision. It is a sustained rejection of everything that no longer serves the higher vision. To live by survival is to live in reaction. It is to make decisions from fear, to measure progress by proximity to comfort, and to view life as something to endure rather than to master. The survival state does not ask what is possible. It asks what is safe. It trades clarity for familiarity, ambition for repetition, and strategy for instinct. In this mode, a man becomes a servant to circumstance rather than an architect of outcome. He is busy but not directed, persistent but not aligned. His energy is consumed not by creation, but by maintenance, maintaining reputation, maintaining security, maintaining an image he no longer believes in. Strategy demands a higher level of awareness. It is not reactive, but intentional. It replaces emotion with structure, replaces urgency with design. A strategic man does not move quickly because he is afraid of falling behind. He moves deliberately because he understands where he is going. He knows that power is not found in speed, but in aim. Clarity becomes his compass, and clarity does not emerge from survival. It emerges from stillness, from discipline, and from ruthless honesty with self. There is no room for sentimentality in strategy. That which no longer serves the mission is discarded, not mourned. This transition from survival to strategy is not aesthetic. It is existential. It requires a reconfiguration of how you interpret pressure, how you define progress, and how you respond to resistance. It requires that you dismantle the internal systems built to keep you small. The man who survives fears loss. The man who strategizes uses loss as information. The man who survives avoids truth. The man who strategizes is sharpened by it. Power does not come to those who wait for the world to change. It comes to those who choose to stop negotiating with the comfort that is slowly eroding their edge. Good luck and thanks.